What's going on, guys, and welcome back to F1 22 for my team career mode season 2 round number 11, the Dutch Grand Prix. So we come to Zandvoort for the first time on this game because we didn't, it's another track, 3 in a row now, where we didn't come here last season. And this is a track, Zandvoort, that I struggled at quite a lot in the previous game. To be honest, it's probably the track that we actually struggled at the most out of all the tracks. It was definitely one of the worst ones for me. So interested to see what it's going to be like in this game because, yeah, on the most part, seems to be that I do better on tracks in this game than I did in the previous game. A few upgrades that we put on the car. There was supposed to be like 2 chassis upgrades and a powertrain upgrade come on for this race weekend. Unfortunately, only one of the chassis upgrades went through. The other two, the other chassis and the powertrain upgrade didn't come through, so we had to re-put those on the car. They should be in there, I think, for Monza or maybe even the race after that. But we are still, well, I don't know if we're now back ahead of Alfa Romeo. We may have just been ahead of them in the previous race at Hungary. But yeah, we are ahead of Alfa Romeo. We're 6th on R&D at the moment, and actually right behind Alpine. We are very close to Alpine, and to be honest, the whole field now is very close to each other. It's a really tight field. And as we get into Q1 here, now the rain was coming in this race, in qualifying. It's going to be a dry race, but rain was coming in Quali, so I wanted to get out early. You had to get out straight away to set a lap time in Q1 on dry tyres. I did it early enough that I went P2 at the end of this. Magnussen went P10, so it's P2 for us is crazy. P10 for Magnussen is also pretty good, and you also had probably the biggest shock of Fernando Alonso out in Q1 in the Alpine, so that's a big shock for him. Q2, and as you can see here, we're starting this lap from midway through the lap because for the first time in this game we made it through to Q3. It's absolutely ridiculous, I know. The track that we struggled on the most in the previous game is the track that we've got to Q3 the first time in F1 22. We end up P9 in this wet session, Gasly in P8, and Robert Schwartzman also gets through to Q3 for the first time in his career in the Haas. Kevin Magnussen unfortunately only manages P15, but yeah, we're there. And the other big shocks here, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton do not make it into Q3, so big shocks there. Just this wet weather, the track constantly getting wetter throughout this whole qualifying session, just meant that there was some crazy stuff going on, and we could be on for a good qualifying result here. So here we go, here's my quick lap in Q3, and as you can see, the track is still very wet. It's only intermediate conditions, it is not quite wet conditions, but it is rather wet out there on a track that I have barely driven on this game. I've literally done, I think, a couple of online races around here, and that's about it. Then just this My Team career season here, because like I said, we didn't run this race last season, so yeah, it was a little bit surprised at how well we were actually doing, to be honest, especially considering that I've got a completely dry setup on the car. I haven't adjusted this at all for the wet because the race is going to be completely dry. So there's no point putting a wet setup on the car just to do better in qualifying when it seems like we're doing really good in qualifying anyway. I've put the AI difficulty exactly the same as I have for every other race this season. And it would be weird to me if we are actually quicker on this track, considering how it's been one of our weaker ones in previous games. But we crossed the line and it's a good result. However, on my final quick lap, we accidentally got it a bit over the curb. You see a little bit of a shutter of the screen there because as I was spinning, I kind of instinctively pressed the pause button, so I just had to then come back out of that. That's why there was a bit of a flash there. We didn't do a rewind. We did crash the car. There we go, out of qualifying, but it doesn't matter. It's P9 for us on the grid, which I think was as good as we were going to do anyway. We weren't going quicker on that lap anyway, so yeah, P9 for us. Carlos Sainz P1 and Lando Norris P2.
For years, the passionate Dutch fans have been easy to find trackside in races across Europe. Here, this weekend, it's even easier to find the Dutch fans as they have a race to call their own once again. A warm welcome to all of our viewers in the Netherlands and around the globe, of course, as we get underway for the Dutch Grand Prix. 4 lefts and 10 rights make up the 14 corners of the narrow and demanding Zandvoort circuit, with plenty of peaks and valleys over the course of the 2.6-mile lap, which will demand absolute concentration from our drivers here today. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Lando Norris put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he will start from pole position, with Charles Leclerc alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Ricciardo, Russell, Esteban Ocon and Stroll, Gasly, Shaw, Schwartzman and Guan Yu Zhou, Sainz, Verstappen, Sir Lewis Hamilton and Tsunoda, Magnussen, Bottas, Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso, Latifi, Liam Lawson, Mick Schumacher and Alex Albon picks up the last spot on the grid. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. A warm welcome to Natalie Pinkham, who is beside me in the commentary box today. Let's have a chat about Williams. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within the team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do. And that has definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
So we end up actually starting one better in P8 because the driver who should have got pole position, Carlos Sainz, has taken a grid penalty and will start from P11. So it means that Lando Norris gets his first pole position of this game, and he's starting on in first position, and he's going to try and get his second win in a row. Of course, he won his first ever race in Formula 1 last time out in Hungary. He's here to try and make it 2 in a row, 2 on the bounce for his first races in the sport. So that is big for him, and it's big for McLaren because Daniel Ricciardo is also there in P3. So this could be an exciting race to 5 red lights for the Dutch Grand Prix in Season 2. Lights out and away we go. It's an okay start for us, to be honest. Gasly gets an amazing start. We briefly get overtaken by Schwartzman into turn 1, but we have a little bit of a bump with Stroll up ahead, but don't think there's any damage. It hasn't even given me a little warning, as like, you know, a collision warning thing there. Hasn't even given me that, as we now try and go around the outside of the hairpin. Everybody getting a little bit banked up here, and we're side by side still with Lance Stroll as we go through this very fast section here. But that Red Bull's got quite a bit more speed than us. It is quite a bit quicker, especially in a straight line. So Stroll manages to stay ahead at this point in time, but we're still in P8. We haven't lost any positions from the start, so it's a much better start than we had in Hungary, where we lost 4 positions on the first lap. We are at least going to maintain position on this first lap, but Gasly's had a great start up to P6 there. Schwartzman still in P9 behind us. Carlos Sainz has managed to get himself up into the top 10, and he's starting on the medium tyres. Pretty much, actually, I think everybody in front of me, the top 9, all the way from Lando Norris down to Robert Schwartzman behind me, starting on the soft tyres. And I think it's actually the first time, maybe even in this whole game, where we're starting on soft tyres and even just using soft tyres for a race, because we tend to usually, you know, go like mediums to hard. So yeah, the strategy for this race is soft to hard, so must not be as much tyre wear on this track. Also on lap 1 here, Lewis Hamilton trying to make his way through the order after a terrible first lap, going for a move on Guan Yu, but Guan Yu kind of turns into him a little bit there, and that has given Lewis Hamilton some front wing damage, and his day is getting even worse. He's going to have to come into the pits the end of lap 1. That has not gone well for him. Lando Norris, though, after the first few laps, is still leading the way, and he's leading the way quite considerably at the moment. And Daniel Ricciardo actually managed to get the jump on Charles Leclerc at the start, so it is currently a 1-2 for McLaren at this point in time. Big steps up for McLaren, big step up for Daniel Ricciardo, because he's been a bit off the pace of his teammate. Well, he's currently sitting in second place, so doing a good job. Lap number 4 onto 5, we've got a good run on Stroll off the banking. We're going down into turn 1, side by side with the Red Bull, and we nearly hit Gasly up ahead, but there's not a whole lot of room to work with, but we have a slightly better grip than Stroll. He actually tries coming back at us into the next corner, but we're going to stay ahead of the Red Bull, something that I did not expect to be saying but we've made it work at the moment, and we're now up into P7, and now Gasly is the car ahead, but he doesn't have DRS. He's going to go defensive into turn 1. We're going to try and go round the outside of turn 1 on Pierre Gasly. We should be quicker than Gasly. He's in a slower car, that AlphaTauri. He tries once again like Stroll, looking into the next corner, but he can't quite do it, and we're now up into P6 in this race, and literally just after we made that overtake on Gasly, his engine's gone up in smoke. He's got an issue, and that looks like it is Pierre Gasly out of this Grand Prix. He was looking like a good result, a P10, well, a top 10 finish in this race, but unfortunately it's not going to be for him. As for his teammate and my teammate, Kevin Magnussen, he's going for a move on Gasly's teammate of Yuki Tsunoda. Bit of contact through there where Hamilton had contact with Zhou, but doesn't look like there's any damage for either car there, and Magnussen has got himself up another position, so that's good work from him. He's not quite in the lofty heights that we are, but he's doing a decent enough job, as we're actually just going to check on our with our engineer where our teammate is, and I think he's going to tell us he's in like P12 or something, I think. It's about, yep, I think he told us P12 that Magnussen's in. So, pretty good, to be honest. I think that's decent, but we're up here in P6, and we were supposed to come in at this lap, end of lap 10, but we're not going to come in. We're going to go for one lap longer. We've got a big enough gap to Magnussen that we can kind of come in on the same lap, because we're going to come in on lap 11 the next lap around, and I figured that probably would be the lap that Magnussen would be in as well. Sure enough, it was, but it shouldn't affect us because we've got quite a big gap to him, so it shouldn't slow him down in the pits at all. But we come out there, we pitted with Russell and the cars ahead, so we're going to see how that affects things. As now Lewis Hamilton trying to make his way through once again, this time on Fernando Alonso, driver who got knocked out in Q1, remember. Terrible stuff for him. Hamilton manages to get past him after that front wing change on lap 1. We're now right behind George Russell, and we are showing some serious pace here. I don't know if my difficulty was too low. Like I said, I haven't changed the difficulty from what it was on previous races, but we just seem to be flying at this track, so I'm just going to take it, and I'm just going to say a lot of the teams are very close to each other on R&D. The fact that McLaren winning this race, but are only the 4th quickest team, and they're a decent way behind Ferrari, to be honest. I'm just going to say that we're just good here, our car's good here, and Magnussen just isn't making as good of an impression as we got past Russell. Now Russell locked up into the hairpin. He's been overtaken by Stroll and now finds himself side by side with Max Verstappen. It's a good old little battle there, but unfortunately for Russell, he loses 3 positions in the space of about half a lap there, so that's terrible for him, but it's very good for us. We're now up into P5, as now Charles Leclerc still right on, well, he's on Daniel Ricciardo's tail at the moment, but he's made contact with his teammate Carlos Sainz, who's come out of the pit, now locks up into the hairpin. That is not good for Leclerc. He's now going to have to come out of the pits, come into the pits, and that's really going to ruin his race here at Zandvoort. This is at that same point in time. We spotted an opportunity on Ocon, but then kind of got a little bit caught out by Leclerc locking up into the hairpin, and unfortunately we kind of just had to sit behind Ocon and wasn't able to really make a move there. As you can see in the top left behind us, the 2 Red Bulls have come into the pits for a set of medium compound tyres, so those guys could be quicker than us. They're probably going to be quicker than us at this point in the race, but now we're going to go for a move on Esteban Ocon as the 2 Red Bulls are fighting as well. I think that's Verstappen going a little bit wide into turn 1. We go slightly on the curb. Stroll is now coming for a move on us as we have to turn attack on Ocon into defense against Stroll, but we managed to defend against Stroll but have lost quite a bit of time to Ocon now, and it's going to take a couple of laps to get that time back again. And here it is at that same point in time. Verstappen locked up into turn 1. Russell came back at him, and they're going to go side by side as they come into the hairpin here. But then Verstappen locks up again into Russell, and that gives Russell front wing damage, and it's all getting worse and worse for Mercedes in this race. Now both of their drivers, both of their cars have had to come in for front wing changes, and for Verstappen that's a lockup that actually doesn't cost him at all because it didn't give him any damage, but cost Russell and the Mercedes, so that might be a bit of a bit of a spicy debate for after the race between Mercedes and Red Bull. The controversy with those two teams does not end, as we continue on here behind Esteban Ocon, taking a few laps to try and catch back up to him, but we will eventually manage to get right behind him again. As now Charles Leclerc trying to make his way back through after his front wing change. A lot of the top drivers here having to make front wing changes. He's going for a move on Yuki Tsunoda, and he does a great little move into the chicane there and out of that corner. Great move by Leclerc. He's just going to see if he can score any points at all in this race, but it's going to be quite the feat. At the front of the, well, towards the front, the battle for second. Daniel Ricciardo's held on to second for a McLaren 1-2 at this point in time, but now Carlos Sainz is going to try and go round the outside of turn 1, and he's going to make the beautiful slingshot move, and that ruins the 1-2 for McLaren. It's still currently a double podium for the McLaren team, but now Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari is in second place. We're now once again getting a run on Esteban Ocon, but he's going defensive into turn 1, and he just has a bit too much of a gap to me for me to do anything. But we're really going to fight this one now all the way through this lap, right behind him, trying to see if we can make any opportunity we can here, because I've noticed on the top left there we are actually catching up to Ricciardo as well with Ocon. So Ocon's catching him as well somewhat, but we are quicker. We seem quicker than Ricciardo. We're quicker than Ocon, and honestly I want to get past Ocon as quickly as I can here, because we could be on for a podium. We could seriously be on for a podium finish at the Dutch Grand Prix. Never thought I would say that at this point in my career, but here we go. We're going to try and go around the outside of that corner. Can't quite get the move done. We've now got DRSO hugged up behind Ocon. We're going to go to the outside. He's on the inside going into the chicane, very, very close, but we just about get the move done, and we're now up into P4 in this race. It's all kicking off, and now we've got to push our head down for the final 10 laps and see if we can catch up to Daniel Ricciardo for a possible podium in this race. I did not believe I would be saying that at the start of this race weekend, as now Max Verstappen trying to get a move done on his teammate Lance Stroll. Verstappen's looked the quicker driver. I mean, he's literally leading the championship by quite a considerable margin at the moment, but these last couple of races Verstappen's just been a little bit off it. Hasn't seemed to have the pace, seemed to have been making a few mistakes. He finally though manages to get past his teammate of Lance Stroll and up another position, up into P6. So now he's got Esteban Ocon to contend with to try and get past him for P5, and then I think once he does get past Ocon, he will be closing in on us, because he's a Red Bull and he's on the medium tyre, so he is quicker than us for sure. It just depends how long it takes for him to get past Ocon. As further back, Zhou Guanyu finds himself behind one of the, I think that might be Robert Schwartzman, but he's spun into turn 1. It's been a little while since we've seen Zhou Guanyu do a spin, but he was doing a lot last season, just spinning constantly, and he's done it again here at Zandvoort, so another disappointment for him. I really wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't keep that Alfa Romeo seat for next season, because he's not really been performing how he should be, especially compared to Bottas. Lap 34, we've caught now right up to the back of Daniel Ricciardo, but although we are a bit quicker than him, he's still reasonably quick. He's still quite quick in that car, and he's proving difficult to catch up to, and in the end we're not going to be able to catch him. We're not going to get that illustrious first podium, but it's going to be P4 for us. A way better result than I ever expected to get in the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. P4, right on the verge of a podium. Lando Norris makes it back-to-back wins, back-to-back first wins in this race. Verstappen gets driver of the day. That was an interesting race.
McLaren have pulled it off. They've won in spectacular fashion here today. So, Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
Well, this was a real team victory. They put together a solid strategy today that appeared well suited to the conditions out on track. The driver did everything that was expected of them in the moment to really execute the team's plan to perfection. A shining example of how F1 really is a team sport.
And look at that, they're making their way out onto the podium now. Great race for the McLaren team, and I'm very happy to see them there on the top step of the podium.
So Lando Norris has back-to-back wins. He won for the first time in his F1 career in Hungary last time out, and he gets his second win straight afterwards in at Zandvoort in the Netherlands. Carlos Sainz comes home for P2. He was quicker than Norris. He was catching him towards the end of that race, but the poor qualifying unfortunately meant that he couldn't take the win. Another couple of laps and he might have got past, because I think he got within DRS of Norris literally on the final lap. So a couple more laps and Sainz could have had the win there, but it's Norris who gets it, and it's a double podium for McLaren as Daniel Ricciardo just about secures that third place ahead of us in fourth place. Our best result of this career mode. Verstappen ends up getting Ocon in the end for P5. Didn't get that one on video, but he does manage to get P5 ahead of Ocon. Kevin Magnussen finishes P12, so it's a decent result from Magnussen, but I mean, especially from what we did, I would have been expecting more. Even though we bring in 12 points this round, we don't actually move any higher up in the order. We're still P11, Magnussen P12, but Ocon moves up to P8, Ricciardo moves up to P9, and Alonso moves down to P10. And then Robert Schwartzman picks up his first point, moving up to P17, because he ended up finishing P10 in the race. So very good from Schwartzman and Haas. And yeah, no changes in the Constructors' Championship there. But yeah, still Aston Martin the only team to not score any points so far. Alfa Romeo and Haas are now tied on 8 points in 7th and 8th respectively. So anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.